What is up, guys? McIntyre here, bringing you guys a new type of video today. So I just recently asked one of my viewers let me turn this volume down, sorry. I just asked my viewers for some of their replays, and I was blessed with FullMetalJesus's replay. He is going to be on Hammer today, and I just wanted to kind of go over a replay of another player, talk about things that he's doing good, talk about things that he's doing bad, and kind of by critiquing him, hopefully, he'll learn, but obviously you guys will learn from his mistakes. Sometimes when I go over my own replays, it's kind of like I'm critiquing myself, but what I'm doing is already not wrong, right? It could be better, but obviously when we look at players that aren't like grandmasters, we're going to see a lot of errors show up, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned, right, from these errors. So that's basically what we're going to do with this replay today. This is the first time I've ever watched this game, so I have absolutely no idea what I'm getting myself into, but I'm going to do my very best here to kind of break it down for you guys and for FullMetalJesus. So just off the start, looking at his talents, when we look at the enemy team, they are a one-shot comp, so sometimes when you're going against one-shot as Hammer in particular, Regen Master is not a terrible talent to take. But in this case, because it's this map, the two-lane maps normally suck for Hammer, or even just regen talents in general. You just never really hit that regen threshold, so I like this setup. Just getting in free siege damage at the beginning, so this is really good. He sieges up at the perfect range as well. There's really no complaints here. Let me turn the volume down one more time. So like whenever you load up a new game or a replay, like the volume, it just does its own thing. So there, when the Tyrande showed up, I probably would have just come immediately out of siege with Z. You want to be really careful when you're playing Hammer against heroes like Tyrande. Another example of a hero like her would be Chromie or something like that, right? When they're in your area, even if they're, not necessarily attacking you, respect their damage as Hammer when you're sieged up, because it is very easy for them to do that damage to you, right? With a Falstad, for example, he's probably going to throw a Q at you, so watch out for that. In this case, Sylvanas, if she throws a dagger, there's not really anything else you can do about that, but, that's something that I don't think you really need to worry about. KT Tornado would be one in this game that I'm kind of worried about, and the Tyrande Sun, obviously. So, sieging up, it's not impossible in this game, but you don't really want to put yourself too far out there to get picked off. So one thing that I'll point out to Jesus here as well is that the Immortal is spawning, and a lot of people do this, honestly, so this is not just him in particular, but when the Immortal spawns, get to the middle of the map. Don't sit around and soak the lane. Like, 1 or 2 minions is not going to be a big, it's not going to be a big deal. What's a big deal here is that you start hitting the boss before the other team, right? And in this case, if you rotate to the middle immediately, you can kind of get a head start on them when it comes to that damage. So this is I want to say this is a really good setup here by him. I really like his placement where he's sieged. It's safe. ETC is kind of frontlining. The only way that this is unsafe is if they flank here, and he places his mines to that kind of angle to protect himself from that flank. So that's a really good siege spot. And again, their team is setting up perfectly here, and Jesus looks like he's going to be sieging up here as well. I think that might be a little ambitious on that siege. Yeah. But he does have the right idea with these mines. These mines are protecting his flank, which is important when you play Hammer. So good mine placement. You normally just want to get into that siege and just get ready to race. As you can see, this is going to be fairly close, actually. But they do end up pulling ahead. So now with Hammer in particular, when you're sieging, you want to be really careful on this map not to get caught out and take free damage, which is why like Hover Siege is so good because you can move, right? That's the honestly the only reason I like it so much is because of your ability to move. Like here though, you know, he hasn't sieged up yet, which is good, but we're trying to fight the other team and we have no reason to fight. Like, you know, Jesus right now sieges here. Instead, imagine had he not sieged up and just auto attack this KT. So I'm gonna take it back a few seconds so you guys can see what I'm talking about and why sometimes siege mode is a trap for a lot of Hammer players. The Joanna steps up. All right, a good W away. But for me, Jesus is kind of playing so far back when there's no real damage or threat around him, right? And the KT is going to step up. And instead of just walking up and auto-attacking, he sieges, right? This is a trap. For me, this is a trap. A lot of people want to siege here to shoot him safely, right? But in reality, if you just step up and start autoing him, you're doing the almost same damage. I mean, with the level 1 talent, he's probably doing a little bit more. But my argument here is if he was unsieged and going after this KT, you know, he would have gotten 2 or 3 more auto attacks. So another thing is like utilizing your Z button as well. You can always chase. So this is the type of siege that I'm also worried about, what I talked about before. With the Tyrande on the other team, you're just putting yourself out there, sieging up and sitting still. If the other team wasn't so focused on the Gul'dan, you would be in trouble, and you still might be. If Tyrande has stun up, she's more than likely going to shoot it at the Hammer. So it was just off cooldown. But he does kind of get away with that, but you just really have to be careful when you siege up. So I like this a lot, just staying out of siege. If you're not, you know, you're not attacking a building or doing a camp, there's really no reason to just auto attack the other person. Good rotation here. You know, identifying that Sylvanas will push if you don't defend it. Going up to help out. So this is again what I was talking about with the kind of watching where you siege. You know, he could have honestly just walked up, maybe even hit Z and killed that Sylvanas. It's, I think, okay, and I'm not going to suggest ambush at level 1 because I'm not insane, but if you do take ambush at level 1, which I know there are players out there that do, that like siege up, hit them once strategy is actually okay. Like, then you can get in the poke and it makes sense, but doing it just for the one auto attack, you might as well just walk up and normally auto them. So first aid is going to be picked up at 7, which I like here with their kind of bursty team. If you can just survive their cooldowns, then you win the fight, right? So again, we're going to see a, for me, slower rotation. If I'm the Hammer here, I want to get in position in the middle so that my rotation's easier. And now we've identified where the boss is, so you can kind of just chill. You can post right here, you can post right here, and just attack the boss. This is good. When it comes to team fights, sometimes in this case, if the other team comes into your team, it's much better to just shoot at them. But if they're kind of on the outside, like they just were, they're just focus the objective. Oh, we want to get a good siege spot again. Yeah, it looks like Jesus is doing that. He's got a nice mine placement there. So this is what I'm talking about, right? They're coming into his team. In this case, you want to start shooting at them. And what I love to do is shoot at the back line as well. When it's an objective fight like this, always shoot at the back line. I think he's about to start shooting at the back line. Yeah, so he's shooting at KT right now. And this is perfect. Right? You see KT just goes down with ease. And now he can switch his attention back to Joe, as she's the one in range. Sylvanas is next. Perfect. Now we're back on the objective. It's just very important that you kill the KT. Sometimes I see a lot of hammer players too, just whack-a-mole at the tank, and you just don't get anywhere. Unfortunately for Jesus, his team's fighting off of him. If they just fought to the left of the objective, he could have carried that fight, but it's really not the end of the world. They got an incredibly healthy boss, and they even have a camp pushing out bots. So if this camp gets this building right now, they push top, get a tower in this building, they should hit level 10. AT is going to stop that from happening, so. Again, here, I would just go right to setting up and sieging. You do want to watch out for just taking free damage, though, like that. I was going to say, you need to watch out for the Falstad and the Tyrande. In this particular case, I don't even know if sieging up is worth it. I think if it was me, I would not siege up here. I would just auto attack and move towards them, because you're putting yourself at risk, especially like right now. If the Tyrande player is better than she is, she's hitting that stun on you. Yeah, as I say that, like it kind of like puts a target on your head, right? So I think all of that could have been avoided too if we weren't sieged up there. So let's go back one more time. Just watch that one more time. We're sieged up. The other team's like, oh, okay. You know, if you're not sieged here, you're autoing this Joe, but you're positioned somewhere over here instead, right? You've moved from here to my mouse, where you're at to where my mouse is at, right? So instead, because you're sieged up, you kind of force yourself to take every bit of damage and then end up kind of collapsing there, even onto your team. So you did get a fort though, and you cannot wait for hover siege. I agree with that. But sieging up pre-hover siege sometimes, in some cases, is very unsafe. See, again here, you sieged up, and like, you don't want to do that. Like, you aggressively could have Z'd and auto-attacked him down, instead of sieging up and letting him get away and then trying to go after him. Because you're not doing that much more damage with that siege auto. So here, I would push out bottom and then try to go siege it. A lot of people are going to rotate top, right? But if you just push bottom... So I'm just going to kind of break this down. I have not watched this, but this team gets this fort. 100% they get this fort. There's just no stopping it at this point. The rotation, although it's happening, is slow. And even when you get these three people there, you're still in a 4v5. So you're not gonna do anything to stop this. And when you're hammer, you really need to isolate and like get value out of errors of the other team or errors of your own team. In this case, you're gonna be trading a fort, and if you're proactive, you can go as hammer and get like here and start sieging this wall down. And then the other team is like, oh, okay, we need to send people back. Maybe they split off and have like 3 people there, and in which case your team gets to fight a 3v3. As is, it's not going to happen. And again, the siege has come out. I'm not going to beat this kind of idea anymore, but I think at this point you guys have kind of understood it. Is you don't really need to siege up to auto attack. Again, here, if he hadn't have sieged and just walked at that Tyrande, he would have killed her still and not gotten hit by the stun. So the only time I think sieging is worth on this map, pre-16, is when you're hitting the boss. And that's because you can get a really advantageous position behind walls and stuff. Just like this. Again, hit the KT here if you can. Nice Z away from the Joe. Let me slow it down just a little bit. This is what Jesus was just doing is the type of hammer I like to see. What he's doing right now is the type of hammer I don't like to see. Although it looks good, like, it's not. I don't think it's playing the hero optimally. I also think that unsiege was unnecessary. The other team was no longer threatening. And you want to maximize your amount of damage that you deal on the boss. So if you're not threatened, even if you're like, I see a lot of times too, like players back at like 10% or something when there's a race on the boss happening. If there's a race happening and you're at 10%, but you're not threatened by the other team, don't stop attacking because you're losing out on damage. It's really important to maximize your damage when it comes to these bosses. So for me, even here, when Jesus goes up here to siege, when he was standing here and he could have sieged, like that is a DPS loss. And you want to be quicker on this map, especially about those type of kind of things. Is make sure that you get all your damage out as soon as possible, because it could mean the difference between 100 damage, right? Let's say the other team came in and team fought like they're doing right now, but they needed 200 more damage to win the objective. That not sieging, here and sieging there might have been the difference. So at this point, I think you just want to get out. Team fight has been lost. Your team kind of ran over there a little bit, so I don't know if Thrall was out of mana, but he just died without sundering. I was wondering why there was no sunder. But him going down first really kind of pushed your team composition apart. So here is actually a good time to siege. Right there. When you want to wave clear and there's no threat from the other team, then sieging's fine because you get the AoE splash, right? So, but sieging here is not fine, because now the other team's about to collapse. And I want to say you've already hit your Z. So it's almost guaranteed you go down. Had you not sieged, you probably would have lived there. I think you would have been able to at least maneuver yourself once the enemy team went onto you. And you weren't even, you were like melee range sieging them. So what's the point of being sieged up if the other team is meleeing you? So we'll speed up a little bit until he respawns. Sieging up for camps is good. I like sieging up for camps again. Same idea. Gives you the AoE. Just classic getting the minion value there too. Off the random RNG rocket. So getting this bottom camp out, I think in this case might be worth it. What I want to say with this camp though, and if you have this double camp pushing, it's almost better to just go and fight them now. Yeah, and probably could have just gone after the Sylve. AT's Tornado is just much easier to hit. So is Tron-stun. Had she been quicker about that, I think you probably should be dead here. False ad, nice. Again, this sieging up. I feel like there's so many opportunities missed this game because of that siege. When Hover Siege is live at 16 though, it'll be sick. Like he'll get a lot of value off of these sieges. But until that moment, you really have to utilize, like here, right? I'm gonna go to cooldowns because I know he's got thrusters. He's thrusted. Let me back it up. So the Joe is, they're chasing the Joanna. So thrusters are about to be up. So is BFG. And he opts to siege for that one auto when he could have just not sieged up at all. Been probably here, then thrustered, and gotten 2 or 3 more autos into a BFG. And that would have definitely been the kill. So it's like, when we look at just that, oh my goodness, I don't even have anything to say. He still got his kill. So here comes the Hover Siege. This is when things get really good for Hammer. Against this sort of team composition too, this is when things get really good. So a lot of people are like, well, graduating range is really good, and how's the other team supposed to hit you if you're have 1,000 million range? And it's like, at the end of the day, you're still standing still. So how do they not hit you? You know, if you're standing still, a lot of times, like if you have a hammer or something, it's different because you feel really good about the other team hitting you because you just are getting healed up, right? And you're trading damage, and that's fine. But with like hover siege, you can move in and out of your autos, right? So you're just kind of jabbing at them. And if they do come onto you, then they have to walk through your team. And you can just back up a little bit. Enough, that little bit that you back up is enough to keep you safe too. Like, that's what I think is really important. Let's see if he BFGs here. I'd like to BFG, just get out that damage. Yeah. Again, I don't think you needed to siege up here either. Could have just walked up with your Z. Always stay unsieged unless you're like gonna siege up, move a little bit, and then be able to attack something. Yeah, so this is hover siege just going in. I think this is probably game over. One thing you want to do too when you just hover siege in general is every auto attack move up a little bit, and Jesus is actually doing that really well. Because you have an attack animation on hammer, there's no reason not to move in between autos. You have just a little bit of time in between each auto attack to move. The one thing about hover siege auto too is it's immediate. With normal unsieged hammer auto, it kind of takes a second for the rocket to shoot out. But when you siege as hammer, she kind of turns into like a machine gun auto attack. And you can see here it's immediate. There's no rocket. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, see, it turns into an explosion rather than a missile. Okay, so it's an immediate cast time. So the second that you're kind of, that's why I like playing with sounds and I turn all my music and stuff off, is because you can hear her auto attack, and the second you hear it, move. You hear that, dome, right? You should move almost always after that auto attack, even if you're just right click A clicking. In this case, and the reason for that is, again, you want to stay mobile. Like, you want that Tyrande to shoot a stun where you're standing. Like, if Tyrande stuns here and you've autoed twice and moved a little bit to the right, then that stun's gonna miss. So I think just looking at this game, you can see the value in Hammer, especially on this map. I mean, this is one of her best maps, but you can see the value in Hammer in a situation where the other team doesn't really respond correctly to it, and that even if you're not maximizing your play on her, you're still doing well, right? If you look at Jesus' stats, like, I'm sure he still has good stats, and he does. He has a fairly good stats. It looks like he had a fairly good game. I wouldn't say he had a bad game, but when looking at some of the things he did, he could have done them way better, right? And it's like looking at those things and improving on those things hopefully will help him and will help you guys out. The sieging up to auto attack is really frustrating for me, and I want to see that kind of go away. It doesn't do enough. Stay with the target, and if you feel threatened, then Z away or W them away. Don't siege up to auto attack either when you can just like the one siege up top really frustrated me. Like, the other person is coming after you and you're still sieged. You don't really want to do that, right? Because it just makes the other team have a much easier time hitting you. The second you feel threatened as hammer, Z away. Just Z away. Like, don't let them get in range to stun you out, right? And I think I saw you say something to the Lily about having cleanse. While I agree the cleanse would have helped, it was like a lot of the time you were putting yourself in a position to get stunned. That's something that you can improve on, even if you have no cleanse on your team. Look to improve on your own play, and by doing so, stay out of the stun range or whatever in this case. And by doing not sieging up will allow you to do that. So I think Jesus played a good game here. I think he did a lot of good things right. He really was good about his mines on his flanks. He had good sieges on the objectives, as well as he, for the most part, auto-attacked the right targets. So I have no complaints there. It's just his kind of using Siege, I think, is where his downfall was for me. But I don't think that that's something that he can't just fix really quickly, right? So this is the first one of these that I'm gonna do. I really want to do more of these. I'm looking proactively for games that seem like, you know, they could have gone differently had the person done something different. So I think if you guys are a, you know, if you feel like you have a game that is actually a good game to watch, I'm probably gonna pull some subs from my stream. If you're subscribed to my Twitch stream, I'm gonna ask my subscribers there, or if you're listening to this now, to message me if you have a game that feels like it could have gone differently had you played differently, right? We don't ever want to focus on others. We want to focus on ourselves. So if you have a replay, or just look out for a replay that feels that way, and message me on Twitch when you found it, and I can try to make more of these videos, because this honestly wasn't too bad to make, and I think it's going to be informational for a lot of different people. So I'm really glad that FullMetalJesus allowed me to watch his replay, and I hope you guys enjoyed and learned from it. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for swinging by the video today. If you did like it, please make sure to throw a like on the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also check out my Twitch and Twitter, which will both be located below, as well as my tier list that I stay pretty up to date with. So again, thank you guys so much for all the support, and I will see you all in my next video.